Welcome to the Black Doctor Collective podcast. We as Black doctors are in a unique position. We can change our communities, healthcare, and the world. Of course, we start by changing the way we see and value ourselves. I'm your host, Dr. Shanika Horn, pediatrician and physician coach, travel extraordinaire. I am so happy to have you here and listening. So let's get into it. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of the Black Doctor Collective podcast. This week's going to be a little less structured than I like to do it. To be honest, I think I usually plot out exactly what I want to talk about and make a little bullet points because I don't want to be tangential and I don't want to go off topic. And I really think when I'm talking, I'm focused on what you're getting out of the episode. And so sometimes I think that makes me minimize talking about my experience or like sharing very specific aspects of my story. But I literally just came from a book signing for Dr. Uche Blackstock. And by the time you guys watch this at whatever time in the future, this will already have, obviously happened. But I went to this conversation and in her telling her story, it was just such a perfect reminder that we are each other's storytellers and keepers, in that I could definitely hear things in her story that I experienced. And it just gave me a sense of, even when you think you're alone and even when you feel isolated in your experience, someone else is also going through a very similar experience. And she's a couple years ahead of me in medicine, and her experience still mirrors mine. And so I think everything that she talked about, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and everything that I talk about, there are many of you for whom that experience is happening now, has happened in the past, or potentially will happen in the future. And so I do get a little bit in my head about, just talking off the cuff, which is why I like to plan things. And I think I'm just naturally a planner. But I think this is an important, format as well as the structured format. So this is my first week back in America after being in Ghana for a couple weeks with my boyfriend. In fact, last week's episode where I talked about the worst contract I have ever read, ever, I shot in Accra after missing my flight. Can we talk about the fact that, first of all, I think that might have been the first flight I have missed that was like of my own accord, not like I got delayed somewhere and I missed my connection, like not including anything like that, but like straight up just missed my flight. That has like never happened to me. And I realized that as a physician, I don't even know, it's probably even pre-physician, like as a Black woman, I'm so used to operating at such a high standard and performing at a high standard. I think there's so many parts of my experience and personality that lean into that. So like as a first generation, as a Black woman, as a health professional, as like all of these different types of my identity contribute to the fact that I feel like I'm always on and that I need to be doing things well, and that when things don't go according to plan, like how I'm trying to go off the cuff here on this podcast, I feel out of sorts. I honestly do. And so I missed this flight. And I think in those moments, like right in the moment that these things are happening, of course, I had hope up until, I got to the counter and they were like, check-in counter is closed. And I was like, interesting. Even as I'm going through this, I realized one of my skill sets, and I cannot remember honestly if this was a skill set I had before medical school and residency, but it's like, even though I am having a moment of not quite despair. Despair feels like a really strong emotion for missing a flight, but like disappointment or just like these large emotions where you could feel like panicked or overwhelmed, or I feel those things, but I'm so good at compartmentalizing that and then thinking about, okay, what do I need to do next? What's the best outcome here? How do I get the best outcome? And that's definitely something that was fostered in medicine in addition to probably a part of my personality that was like underlying. So anyway, I managed to regroup, get to the ticket counter, you kind of claw your way to the ticket counter because there is no line and everybody's yelling and people are upset because a lot of people missed this flight. In Accra, they closed the check-in counter 2 hours prior to the flight. I'm a very last minute airport arrival person because I do not like to spend a lot of time in the airport. Even with lounge access, I don't even go there with enough time to truly enjoy the lounges. I usually get there in enough time to just get through security. I have pre-check, I have clear, I have Delta ID, I have like all the things. So usually I get to the airport maybe 30 minutes to an hour before boarding, just enough time to like breeze through security, go to the lounge, grab something to eat, and just get on the flight. And that does not work in Accra. And it obviously does not work in a bunch of places. And so in Accra, because you're going through, it's an international flight, you're going through like immigration and you're going through security and all of these things. And actually, it didn't actually take that long, but they anticipate it's going to take long. And so 2 hours before the flight time, they close the check-in counter. You cannot even check in. You cannot check your luggage. You cannot press go. You cannot collect $200. Okay. And I was super late. I was way later than that because I also hit a ton of traffic driving from our new place to the airport. It's further than our condo, our apartment unit. And so we both, I think, just underestimated. We knew there was going to be traffic. We underestimated how long it was going to take. A 20-minute drive became an hour and a half. And I was so late. Anyway, I would have never made it because I left the house at the 2 hour to the flight mark. But I, navigated this moment and I decided, okay, I am going to just make the best of it. Like I have an extra day in Accra. Some people were told they couldn't, my flight was Thursday initially. Some people were told they couldn't leave till Saturday. I fortunately was able to leave on Friday based on my ticket class because I was flying business and I'm pretty sure business was not full actually on Friday. So they had room, I think for a lot of people flying economy, those flights book really, really fast. There's a busy route. I don't know about like the other, other class fares, but I could have ended up being there till Saturday. Like, I don't know. And I just thought about in that moment how my life is accommodating to these changes, even if my personality is not. So my personality is like, I like a plan. I want to stick to the plan. I want things to go as I intended them to go. But my lifestyle, what I've created for myself, actually really accommodated this flexibility because y'all know I love to say I don't work in January, and I'm going to talk about that also. I don't like to work in January because it's cold and I don't want to leave my house to be upset by anybody. Like right now in New York, it is so cold, bitterly cold, that if you don't have to leave your house, you should not. Like, it's terrible. And then there was snow and ice and it's just disgusting. So for me, I know I hate Januaries. Even when I was in fellowship and I was rotating between a domestic location and an international location in my global health fellowship, I always chose to go to Liberia in January so that I could miss January and February in New York because they are the coldest months of the year here. All that to say, I have now structured it where I generally, like, if I'm not going to be abroad in January, I'm going to be inside my house. And it takes every year is a different form. Actually, this year kind of took me by surprise. I wasn't sure how I was going to pull January off because I've been in the same clinic since last February. And I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to take January off. And that was because I was talking myself out of it. Like I was legit like, are they even going to allow me to take January off? What is that even going to look like? This is such a crazy ask. Who's going to take the whole month of January in pediatrics when it's the busiest time of year? Like that is wild. Am I going to be able to do this? But generally speaking, I try not to work in Januaries. And I try to book my flights so that there's buffer time on the end of them so I can recover because jet lag is no joke. Ghana's 5 hours ahead of us right now because of daylight savings time difference. Usually it's 4 hours. Half the year is 4 hours, half the year is 5 hours. So right now we're at 5 hours difference. And so, I decided I'm going to come back on a Thursday. I'm going to start, pick back up with my coaching. And it's a holiday weekend. MLK Days on Monday. Gives me some time to like recoup and pick back up with my coaching clients and my other, consulting jobs and stuff on Tuesday. And for clinical medicine, I don't have to do anything in person, right? Like my clinical medicine stuff, I have tabled till February. So I just had a moment of being really grateful because people were in the airport talking about how they had to go back to work the next day. They were expected at work the next day and how that was going to impact them. And I just thought, I have literally created this. This is not luck. It's not fortune. I have created the kind of work environment that allows me to take these kinds of breaks because I've been off since New Year's Eve. Not New Year's Eve, Christmas Eve. Lord, child, I've been off since Christmas Eve. It's almost a month. So Christmas Eve, December 24th was the last day I was in clinic and the last day I did any coaching for my own program. I have been off since almost a month, right? And so I realized that is something that most people don't have. So to be off for a month and then still not be doing anything clinical for the rest of January, that's not something that I take for granted. It's not something that is usual, right? Like, where have you heard of this? I don't even know that I've heard of this. Even my own brain has a hard time wrapping around this notion of I self-preserve in the winter time and what that looks like. And so I share that with you all because sometimes we all need like permission or we need to hear the types of things that people are doing in order to understand what is a possibility for us and that we can create these things. And some of y'all will still tell yourself this is absolutely not a possibility for me. I don't know what she's doing and make me a special unicorn. I'm not a special unicorn. I am just trying to create the maximum flexibility for myself because that is how I self-preserve. That's how I take care of myself. That's how I show up better. And that's how I'm going to be the most, I don't want to say productive. That sounds a little capitalist, but like the best version, produce the best outcome, be the most creative person, like the version of myself that I really want to be. This is how I do it, is that I have thought completely outside of the box of what has been presented to me, and I create the options that work best for me. And so it does not always go smoothly. It just doesn't, right? Like I was coming up to the end of last year and thinking, there's no way I can ask for a full month off. I work in this clinic. This is crazy. As it turns out, there were some situations in the job, and I've mentioned this on previous episodes, and I am really cautious about talking about this, but there were situations in that clinic job that I did not feel aligned with. And so I did, in fact, submit a resignation to that position, and I ended up not resigning after having some extensive conversations that are still happening. So nothing is still set in stone. We're still having the conversations, but part of that conversation and the reopening of the negotiation process was that I would not be available in January. So this year it worked out that way. That's not like it's an annual clause in some contract. I actually don't have a contract with this job. I have an offer letter with some days on it, and those are not even the days I work. So it just is what it is. I tell you that just to say, like, anything is possible. You get to decide what you want to be around for and what you don't. And yeah. So here I am enjoying my January. And one of the things that I did was get tickets to Dr. Uche Blackstock's book signing. She wrote a book called Legacy. It's a Black physician reckons with racism in medicine. And so I spent the evening at her book signing event, And there were so many good points raised. It was her and another physician who were doing the conversation. And I just felt like so many things in her message resonated with me, like I said, in my own personal story, but also things that I want to share with you. And it's totally continuous with what we've already been discussing. So I realized in my journey, I got to the end of training, medicine did not look like what I thought it was going to look like. And that's so true for so many doctors that it's just, you cannot be disillusioned. Like it's just not what it's cracked up to be. And so there are so many different paths you can take when you become an attending. You just get to decide, right? And so for some of us, like for me, it was hard to stomach the injustices I was seeing in the medical system, the poor outcomes I was seeing that were like totally preventable. And my initial thought was like, I just got to get out of here because I didn't see a way forward. I didn't see how it was going to be possible to create the results I wanted to in the current environment. And, you know, they talk about that in the discussion is a lot of people feel like the way forward is to create something for themselves. I think it's particularly important for people who speak on this issue like myself. Like even now, I hold back in really discussing the nitty-gritty of my current job situation out of fear, right? Like straight up fear, right? Because yes, I have alternate sources of income, which does allow me to even come on this platform, right? I think you have to create a certain level of security for yourself to just be able to speak semi-freely. But for me to speak completely freely about everything, I would have to release the notion that something I would say here would blow back on me and affect future opportunities. That feels so risky to me. And so I am even edited in some of the things I say on the podcast, and I present things in a certain way. And sometimes I think about it in retrospect, like, oh, maybe I should have emphasized a certain point more, or maybe I should have shared more, or what's this going to look like? You know, how's this going to age? And I think right now for where I am, I'm just doing the best that I can do with what I got. I talk about things in a way that still allows you guys to learn or to give yourself permission or to open your mind to the possibilities, and also doesn't make my internal amygdala totally lose her mind out of fight or flight. So it's a balance, but that's one of the things that both the doctors talked about was being a part of a system when you don't agree with the underlying values, and even when you elevate yourself into leadership roles, right? Or into roles that are supposed to have a voice, it's good until it isn't, right? Like there's still a line that they have for you that you should not cross. Sometimes you're just a figurehead. Sometimes you're just a spokesperson. You're just an image, and you don't actually get to say or do all of the things that you really believe or value. And when that happens, you have a decision to make. Do you stay or do you go? Do you create something else? And so that's really the journey that I'm on, right? It's creating something else. So right now it's creating the kind of life that allows me to travel, spend time with my boyfriend who's building abroad. Like our relationship totally would not work, I think. Well, I don't know that's to be true, but I would like to think that it would not work if I were full-time in a clinic and we didn't have the kind of flexibility to like travel and see each other when we did, right? Things just would look very differently. And also the kind of life that I'm building where I can just decide, like January is a depleting month for me. It's cold. I don't feel my best. I don't want to be in a clinic. Things that would have sounded so unreasonable to me in the past are things that I have been doing for years now. And still my brain thinks it's a little bit unreasonable, right? Like still my brain is like, who do you think you are to be taking this kind of time off? I was even reviewing my calendar from last year, and I traveled every single month last year, except for, I guess, December, maybe November, December, but it's the holiday times and I had so much stuff going on. But I pretty much had a trip, and some of them were long. Like I did my 40th birthday in Portugal for more than a week. I did a 2-week vacation for my birthday before that in the Caribbean. I did like 2 weeks in Ghana. I did like, they were extended vacations. They weren't just like a weekend here, a jaunt there. Some of them were. Some of them were like 2 and 3 day things or like an extended weekend. But a lot of the trips were big trips. Like I took more big trips than people have vacations in the whole year. That was something I wanted to create for myself. I wanted to feel like I'm in control of my time. I get to decide how much of my time is spent at work and how much of my time is spent, doing things that I love with people that I love. There's still fear. I don't want to ever perpetrate that this is something that I'm doing fearlessly or that I just have this like courageous attitude towards it. No, I'm still scared. I'm still scared that I might mess something up, that I might push something too far. I think that's a fear that a lot of people have, is that I might ask for too much. I might push it too far. And then what's going to happen? And the thing is, I've been pushing it. And every year I push more and more because I started off at a 4-day work week thinking I was doing it, right? Like a 3-day weekend every weekend was where I started. And I wound up here where I'm taking week-long vacations every month or taking whole months of the year off. Like there were years where I only worked 6 months out of the year. So this is something that I'm just playing with, molding, trying to see what the possibilities are for myself because I can't save anybody but me. In medicine, we are led to believe that we are supposed to save everyone on our backs, but I have to save me first. I can't save anybody if I'm not saving myself. And we also realize as Black doctors that sometimes the only person we can save is ourselves, especially in this political climate, especially in the current culture of medicine. Sometimes you have to put you first. What does it look like to put yourself first? Does that mean continuing to practice? Does that mean stopping practice? Does that mean changing how you practice? Does that mean abandoning all ideas of what safety and security has meant for maybe other people in your family, right? Because if you ask my mom, the fact that I changed jobs like this is like so wild and so crazy. All of that to say is I'm still figuring things out, and that's what I want for you, to be consciously making choices to continuously move towards the life that you desire, to continuously adapt your contracts, your work schedules, everything, to push the envelope so that you can save yourself, so that you can preserve, especially now, especially in this year of 2025, beginning the year off with all this tomfoolery and shenanigans that's happening on the political stage, in the healthcare sectors. We have to save ourselves. So I share with you what saving myself looks like so that you can see that it's not, whatever you're asking for is probably not outlandish. Most of the times when I talk to new people, especially people who are interested in negotiating for something or getting what they want at work, most of the new clients that I speak to, nothing they've asked for is unreasonable. They either want to just move to a 4-day work week. They want to do those steps that I did when I first started making the steps. The beauty of a program like this is that you don't have to take as long as I did to get to where I am now, right? Because there are steps, right? Like, so I started off like, okay, let me just try one thing at a time. I'm going to try adjusting my schedule. And then I'm going to try adjusting my pay rate in the next job. I'm going to continue the schedule and I'm adjust my pay rate. Okay, now I'm going to also adjust how much time I take off. I'm going to adjust how much input I have in a job. Like I just kept adjusting and tweaking and adjusting and tweaking. And now my clients get that in their first job, sometimes out of training, right? Like all the tweaks, all the adjustments happening in the first go. Because I've gotten so much better at creating that and teaching other people how to create that job, that experience for themselves. Anyway, I think I've, chatted long enough, but you guys get the gist. you can create what you want to create. You have to live with the fear sometimes, and you have to do it scared, and you have to do it based on self-prioritization because you got you. And if you have you, you will go so much further than trying to please other people who don't got you. That's it. I hope that was in my mind. I'm like, did I ramble? Did I go off track? Did I veer off the topic? Was the message clear? I hope so. I'm about to go eat dinner. It's like already 10 p.m. my time, but I really wanted to get all these things off my brain and just talk to you guys. So please give me feedback. I also wanted feedback from last week's episode about the worst contract, just what your thoughts were. It released today. So hopefully everyone listens, tunes into that episode and tells me what you think. And if you guys have a contract, actually, that would be an interesting and fun thing to do. You guys can email me your contracts and I can discuss them on the podcast. I would be more than happy to do that. And of course, I would eliminate all identifying information like your name, your institution, all of that. But to discuss the clauses of your contract, that would be fun for me, actually. So let me know if that's something you're interested in. Enjoy your week. I'm out. Dinner time. Bye. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe to the podcast. And what I want you to do next is link us everywhere you can. Instagram at The Black Doctor. Just become part of our collective. I want you here. Thanks. Until next time. Bye.